Great, thank you. Appreciate that introduction. And first of all, again, thank you very much for taking the next hour of your time to join me to learn about how you can leverage SharePoint for project management success. My name is Dux Raymond Sai, and yes, I had a hard time growing up with that name, but feel free to call me Dux, and we're all good. I got my ducks in a row, all right? How's that? So with that being said, why don't we get started? So the purpose of this next hour is we're going to look at SharePoint, but more importantly, we're going to look at SharePoint and how we can benefit from it in a project management environment. I'll show you how you can use SharePoint as a project management information system. And in addition, we'll also look at SharePoint's capabilities to deal with document management around a project environment. We'll look at how we can integrate SharePoint with common project management tools. I'm sure a lot of you are using different kinds of tools in managing projects, things like Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Project, email. So we'll look at how SharePoint can interact with that. We'll look at how SharePoint can facilitate better team collaboration. Again, today, and I'm sure a lot of you out there would agree, we collaborate in projects pretty much using email. So we'll see how SharePoint can alleviate a lot of the bottleneck we've been experiencing. We'll look at how we can automate project processes. And what I mean by processes would be things like, it could be as simple as vacation request process or a change control process. How about the process that you all have called salary increase request process? You got that, right? Okay, quickly, there's questions on access to the presentation. You certainly will have access to this after the presentation. We'll also look at how we can generate relevant project reports. So it could be as simple as a report on which tasks are behind, a milestones report, or we can also look at how we can generate dashboards if you want to. Yeah, dashboards. You want to get promoted, use that word, dashboards. And lastly, we'll look at how we can use mobile devices to access a SharePoint-based project management information system. Okay? So with that being said, let me give you a quick background on myself. Again, my name is Dux Raymond Sai. I'm a certified project management professional. If you're not familiar with this certification is awarded by the Project Management Institute. They set global standards for project management. They've been around since the mid-60s, I believe. My current position is I'm a managing partner with my company called Innovative E. We're based out of Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia. And we serve clients around the world delivering a lot of Microsoft-based solutions, so along the realms of SharePoint, EPM-based solutions, etc. In addition, I also write courses, and off and on I teach for Learning Tree International, a global training provider. And most recently, as you've learned, I written a book for O'Reilly. It's called SharePoint for Project Management, which brought me today, that allows me to share my experiences and tips with you. So for more information, feel free to connect with me. I got my email up there, my LinkedIn account, my blog, and even my Twitter account. And obviously, I'm also in Facebook, MySpace, all the social networking sites you can think of. I'm there. All right? Okay, so let's go and get started. Now, before I jump in and talk about SharePoint, and more importantly, talk about the different ways and how we can use SharePoint for us to be successful in project management, I'd just like to share a study that was done about a year ago, and in fact was done by Project Management Institute. So what PMI did is they sent out a survey to certified project managers around the world. And essentially what that survey is trying to figure out, that survey asked, okay, being a project manager, what's the most, or what tool do you use to manage projects? And it was interesting. After a week later, the results came back, they tallied it, and the top 5 tools project managers use today that came back actually kind of shocked me. Because I'm thinking, boy, we're in the day and age where almost a lot of people have smartphones, your BlackBerry, your iPhones. We're in a day and age where you have TiVo or DVR, you record all these shows with this fancy device. We're in a day and age where your cars have GPS devices, very, very high tech. And guess what's the #1 tool that project managers use today to manage projects? Any ideas? Throw in your thoughts. Put it in the chat room here. What's the #1 tool? So I got email, Excel. Well, Laura, you got it right. The answer is email. Well, I think it's Jerry who put it in. Email is the #1 tool. Excel is #3. Microsoft Project didn't even make it to #5, right? What do you mean, Ducks? What do you mean email? I mean, I'm high tech, you know, I use all the good stuff. No. Think about it. Think about when you work on projects. Where are requirements documents stored? You'll say, it's in our network share, or it's some website. Nope. If somebody asks you for requirement documents or a copy of the requirements document, most likely you look for it in your email. If the customer calls up and asks for some status report from last week, you look for it in your sent mailbox folder. Your resource calls you up and asks about some task updates they've done a couple of weeks ago. You look for it in your email. So in short, email is the #1 tool used by a lot of PMs today. I mean, it works, don't get me wrong, right? However, it could be better. I'm not saying we're going to junk email, we're going to junk everything we have, no. I mean, I still use Excel, I still use Microsoft Project, but guess what? With SharePoint, life can be much better. We can be much more efficient as project managers. And talking about SharePoint, let's get started. Before I show you on how you can leverage SharePoint for project management success, I want to make sure we're all on the same playing field, or we all have a good understanding of what SharePoint is. I'm certain if you've asked 10 people what SharePoint is, you get 10 different answers. So let me clarify it, and then we'll move on and look at how we can use this for project management. You see, it's interesting, Microsoft used the word share and point for this product. So if you break it down, it actually addresses 2 major issues that we face today, specifically as project managers. The word share really talks about or deals with the whole idea of collaboration, right? The whole idea of collaboration. So if I were to put the word collaboration down, so let me type it for you. Pick a different color here. All right. Okay, so good. There you go. Color's not cooperating with me. Anyway, it deals with the whole idea of collaboration. Now, what do I mean by collaboration? For example, collaboration revolves around a lot of different issues. It could be as simple as I'm working out of the East Coast office. I have a colleague working out of the West Coast office. We're collaborating on the proposal template. We're updating it. We're working on it. But I don't really know what time my colleague will be working on it. So, you know, I open the file from the network share, and off I go. I start doing it. And my colleague, not realizing I'm doing that, does the same thing. Now, what ends up happening? What ends up happening is we play the game called Who Saved the File Last Wins. You play that game? Not fun, right? So I'm not saying it's a lost cause. I might end up calling IT, or I might end up calling somebody to help me. But again, it's not as efficient. So collaboration around the aspect of working together on a single piece of information. Collaboration in terms of how would we know what we've done if I'm working off of a different side of the world. If I have a team out in Asia or Europe, how do we do offline collaboration? How about remote collaboration, right? So what Microsoft wanted to do with its product is provide tools to alleviate that, to support that. And that's one of the big things that SharePoint obviously can do, is to provide these collaborative tools, and we'll get to see it. Another aspect of point, or another aspect of SharePoint, is the word point. I just saw the last James Bond movie, you know, the guy with the blonde hair, he was actually good. And in every James Bond movie, there's always a scene that somebody will pick up the phone and say, okay, James, I'll meet you at this whatever rendezvous point. We all know that the word rendezvous means meeting place in French. We don't know where that is, you know. Next scene, James goes in some dark alley, some guy in a hooded shirt, just pass him a bag and off they go, right? But what's interesting about that is both of them know where that place is. Both of them know what the protocol is and how to pass that information. Well, that's what SharePoint, the word point in SharePoint tries to address. It's the idea of centralizing information and not having information all over the place, right? You got email, network share, thumb drive, Yahoo mail account. having it centralized in a single location, but more importantly, only a select few would be able to work with it. So it's elite. And this select few, we can even go further. We can define, oh, contractor can't work with the budget information, so contractor won't be able to see it or touch it, etc. So in short, SharePoint addresses collaborative issues and information centralization issues in this respect within a project environment. Now, to give you a quick definition of SharePoint, SharePoint allows individuals and organizations to easily create and manage their own collaborative websites. And what we mean by individuals in an organization, it essentially looks at a limited group of people. It's an elite club, to say the least. So it's not intended for the whole world. It's not intended for, for you to use it to build the next eBay. I mean, I'm sure you can, but the intent is for a group of people. So it could be a company, a project team, a department. But here's the catch. To easily create and manage, right? Now that's something big. Because if we think about this, I mean, everything I've talked about so far is not rocket science. We've got tools today that can do this. Some of you mentioned in the chat room, we have IBM QuickPlace. We use Google Docs. We use Basecamp. That's all good. Not a problem. But here's how the game is being changed with SharePoint. The word is easily, right? Because if we look back traditionally, I'm a project manager. Let's say I got a project assignment. If I wanted a website or a network share, what do? I fill out some kind of help desk request, and I need IT to build it for me. Now, what's the challenge there? The challenge there is depending on how busy IT is, how important my project is, I might get my website or my network share right away, or I might not. And not to bash on IT, I mean, I used to work for IT, but there's so much stuff on IT's plate. And we always say, IT is slow, or IT is a bottleneck. Well, the fact of the matter is, IT in most cases has a lot to do. So your request might not be as high a priority as to what they're doing. So what I'm saying here is you as a project manager, you are empowered to create, and not only create, you are empowered to manage these websites as well. Now, when I talk about create, I'm not talking about, just putting up pictures and graphics and logos. I'm talking about you being able to dump in search engines, a repository for documents. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is you as a project manager would have the ability to define who can come in, who can see what, who can do what. Again, that traditionally has been on IT's plate. Account privileges, permissions, and all that good stuff. Right? So really, it's a benefit for both sides. IT can focus on their core competencies, and yet a lot of these common things or a lot of these requests that typically would come into IT, you as a project manager would be able to work on it. Now, hold on, ducks. Wait a second. You don't know the kind of folks I work with. I mean, them building websites? Come on. Listen, here's the deal. As long as you are familiar with Windows, basic Windows operations, basic Office operation, you know how to fire up Word, Excel, save a file, you know how to surf the web, for crying out loud, I mean, if you can update your Facebook status, come on, who doesn't update their Facebook status? You are well qualified to use SharePoint. And the beauty with SharePoint, apart from being able to create these collaborative websites, it seamlessly integrates with Windows and Office, and we'll see a lot of that in a while. Now, quickly, the word SharePoint does not refer to a specific product or technology. The word SharePoint is really more of an umbrella term like the word Office. So you use Office, we're talking about a bunch of different products. The same with SharePoint. SharePoint is made up of a bunch of different components, and depending on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to use it for, there's different benefits of one over the other. So now let me talk about these components because it's important for you as project managers to be able to differentiate what these components are and also what they can do with respect to your project environment. Now, the best way to understand these components is really to come up with an analogy. Now, for those of you who know me, I'm a big car aficionado, so I think a car is a great analogy to SharePoint. All right, so let me get started here. All right, tell me, what is the purpose of a car? Okay, in the chat room window, what's the purpose of a car? Anybody? To get to A to B. Thank you, Rich. A to B, transportation. Very good. So that's the purpose of a car, to transport people from A to B. Yeah? So awesome. So let's put transport right here. Now, the purpose of SharePoint, I kind of already told you. The purpose of SharePoint is to provide collaboration tools and to help us with information centralization. Okay? That's cool. Yeah, the color is barely noticeable. Forgive me, it's yellow. I'm not sure why the color is yellow. So the purpose of a car is to transport people A to B. Purpose of SharePoint, provide collaboration tools and information centralization. All right? So good. Now, what's required in the car to fulfill this purpose? So if you look at a car, what's the component in the car that without this, we cannot transport people? Gas is external to the car. Engine. Nicole, very good. Engine. So what's required of a car is an engine. Without an engine, there's no car. Right? Without an engine, this purpose of transporting people just won't happen. So what about SharePoint? What do we need in SharePoint to transport, or not to transport, but to provide collaboration tools and information centralization? Well, in SharePoint, WSS, or also known as Windows SharePoint Services, is the core technology of Microsoft SharePoint. This is considered as the engine of SharePoint. It provides all the collaboration tools and information centralization tools that we need. Now listen, WSS is available for free as long as your organization is utilizing Windows Server 2003 or above. That's right. So if all you need SharePoint for is to provide collaboration tools, information centralization, and everything around document management, WSS can do it for you. Now, let me go back to my car analogy. I'm not done yet. Like I said, I'm a big car aficionado. In fact, I'll show you my car in a while. I watched a car show, and it's a very inspirational car show. It's called Pimp My Ride. You guys watch that show? Yeah. Anyway, they had a show one time, and they were featuring a Volkswagen Eurovan. I have a Volkswagen Eurovan, and you know, the great exhibit pimped up this Eurovan, right? I'm like, man, that's cool, but there's no way I could do it. You know, you spend a lot of money on it. Anyway, I found all the stuff I needed on eBay and just pimped up my Eurovan. So here it is. Here it is. So my Eurovan, if you see it, is it showing up? Okay, it's pulling it. It's coming up. 1 second. Has a touchscreen in front. Can get on the internet through my 3G on the phone. Has 7 speakers, subwoofer, amplifiers. Has GPS, surround sound. I can play movies. On the back, it has 2 headrest screens and a 15-inch drop-down screen. Right? Now, also, I'm saving money to get my 22-inch rims as well. So this is known as the SharePoint Geek Bargain. Yeah? Now, all right. Okay. Here's my question. I have all these equipment or accessories attached to the car. Now, will those accessories fulfill the purpose of the car to transport people? I mean, will the GPS fulfill that purpose? No. Very good, Joseph. The engine is required. However, don't get me wrong, this stuff is good stuff because look, for example, with my GPS, I don't get lost anymore, right? I'm the type of guy that I don't ask for directions if I get lost. It's just me. So now with the GPS, I don't get lost. Second, what about those video thingy-majigs, Doug? Audio, what's up with that? I mean, what's the benefit that you get out of that? Well, I have a 3.5-year-old son. His name is Johan. And whenever we do long road trips, you know, with kids, they get bored right away. But now he doesn't. I tell you, I just fire up all those screens. I play Barney, and he gets a kick out of it, especially with my surround sound. He loves it when Barney starts singing, I love you, you love me. He just digs the bass. I love you, you love me, and the bass kind of kicks in when that song comes up. So what's the benefit there? Well, he's not complaining about the trip. You know, you could sit there for hours just watching your shows with a nice sound system and TV. Now, what's my point? My point is, let me go back. MOSS extends the capabilities of the Windows SharePoint services. MOSS stands for Microsoft Office SharePoint Server. This is the second large component of SharePoint, and it provides a lot of the extra capabilities that sits on top of WSS. And these extra capabilities are things like more powerful search engine, personalization, content management, business data catalog, single sign-on. I can go on and on and on. However, unlike WSS, MOSS is not free. All these advanced features comes with some cost, just like all the stuff I bought for my car. Even though I try to get it cheaply, I still spent a good chunk of change there. But anyway, that's the difference. WSS is the core engine. MOSS gives you a lot of the extra stuff. Now, if you're thinking, well, why do I have to know this, Dux? I mean, I'm a project manager. I couldn't care less about what version we have. Why is it important? It's important because that has to do with licensing. So when you talk to your IT folks, if you're IT, you got to make sure if you rolled out MOSS, there are licensing costs to it. So feel free. I'll give out my contact info if you have questions about that. But that's a big difference. So one of the things, if you don't know yet, you got to check what component of SharePoint do you have. Do you just have WSS, or do you have the whole whiz-bang thing, MOSS? Now let's talk about, absolutely, Rob, you're absolutely right. MOSS, Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, comes in multiple versions. And again, it all boils down to your needs. So now we've talked about SharePoint. Let's talk about a PMIS. For those who don't know, PMIS stands for Project Management Information System. This is a term, formal term coined by the Project Management Institute. And essentially what it is, it's a standardized set of tools that will help you as project managers, and it's integrated into a system, right? So the idea is this system, this PMIS, would support you as a project manager, would support you as a project team. It would allow you to tie all the information about the projects in a single spot. Not only in your email inbox, not in the network share, not in somebody's Google account or Yahoo Mail account. This is kind of the tie that binds everything together. So it's used to support project artifacts, documents, helps you with communication, control project changes. So everything that has to do around the project from day one to the end, this PMIS would be able to support. Now, what's out there? I mean, obviously, I won't tell you SharePoint's the only solution. There's a lot of solutions out there. I'll talk about SharePoint briefly, but Project Server, right? It's a great solution, don't get me wrong. My company, we help organizations roll out Project Server, but what's the catch? Project Server, unlike SharePoint, has a lot more features, very sophisticated, but the catch with Project Server is it assumes your organization is very matured in your project management process. Things like you have a PMO, you have a standardized way on how you plan, execute, close your project, you have a resource management strategy. So it requires that you're very, very mature already in your PM process, even before we can roll out Project Server. Now, even if you don't use MS Projects, that's another great point, because Project Server requires MS Project, whereas with SharePoint you don't, and you'll see it. Clarity, it's another great tool. It's another product. It's costly. Same with Primavera. Very great product, and it's very expensive as well. I'm sure some of you would know. Now, Dux, what about web-based tool? You know, I know you're a Microsoft guy. You're preaching the Microsoft word, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. I mean, Google, Basecamp, Zoho, absolutely, no doubt. But here's the thing. What we don't get from these web-based Project Insight, right? But what the challenge myself, or what challenge I face with these web-based tools is, again, they're separate silos or entities. Whereas, as you'll see with things like SharePoint, not only does it behave at the web level or the browser level, it behaves seamlessly along familiar tools like Office and Windows. Right? Whereas with other tools, yeah, don't get me wrong, I mean, they're good, but the problem is I end up entering data twice because, oh, it has to be in Excel or Access, and then it has to be in Google Team Site or Basecamp. Okay? Now, We're going to get there now, Ray. Okay, all right, Ducks. I get it. Let's talk about SharePoint. What are the benefits of SharePoint as the PMIS? Well, obviously, SharePoint as a PMIS, individual projects can have a collaborative website, which I'll show you in a while. Not only can it have a collaborative website, access can be limited to whoever's engaged or whoever's involved in that project. And like I said, again, if this is set up right, IT intervention is minimal. Right? Project communications can be streamlined. Project artifacts can be centrally stored and maintained. And when I talked about maintain, things like versions, who touched what, when, you can easily pull up, right? Based on familiar tools. So let's look at these 7 ways to leverage SharePoint for project management success. Number one, this is what I've been talking about the presentation so far. Project managers can easily create a project management information system. Technical skill requirement is minimal. As long as you have familiarity with Windows-based concept, Office concept, or familiar with web browsing, you are good to go. And I'll show you a screenshot in a while. You can easily define stakeholder access. So as a project manager, I mean, kind of stepping you through it, I can, let me show you a quick screenshot here. By the way, I have a URL that I recorded a video demo. This platform isn't optimized to deliver videos, but I have recorded a video demo that later you can go and watch. I'm talking over it. I'll show you how project managers can create a PMIS. But quickly, if you look at the screenshot, everything is template-based, just like what you're familiar with in things like Word. You know how in Word you got templates for brochure or fax or birthday cards? Same with SharePoint. SharePoint comes with a lot of ready-made templates, and you can create your own as well, that literally it takes 3 minutes to create a SharePoint-based website. So you as a PM, if you look at the screenshot on the left, you go through this wizard, and once you hit OK, your website or your SharePoint-based project site is created right away. Now once it's created, you can go in and customize it. And when I say customize, you can say, well, I want more document repositories, or I want a search engine, I want a task list, I want this and that. You can easily do that without programming. Yeah? Now, another big benefit as a part of easily creating a PMIS, if deployed appropriately, IT does not have to deal with a lot of these basic things. Now again, don't get me wrong, IT is busy enough. You know, let me just share a story. I have a degree in telecommunications engineering. Way back when, one of my first jobs was at the help desk, and this is about 12, 13 years ago. I would get ticket requests, and it would say things like, hey, IT, can you update the header of the intranet because there's a typo in the header. And seriously, at that time, I felt kind of offended because I didn't go to engineering school to update text on the intranet. Unfortunately, at that time, you know, there's really no easy way to do it. You had to use a very complex language called HTML. Yeah, that was hard. And then you had to use a very complex tool like Notepad, right, to update web pages. Now, today, you don't have to worry about that. I mean, you can give a college kid a six-pack beer and he'll build you a whole website. But my point being is, simple things like that, IT does not have to deal with, right? At that time, I was busy working on assembler code, C++ code, and there's so much on my plate, and I had to deal with all these things. Not only was I frustrated, the user who was asking for help was frustrated because it would take me days to get back to whatever he or she needs to be done, right? But now with SharePoint, it's all on you. You are empowered to do it, to build it, to maintain it. Now, the next benefit of being able to utilize SharePoint for project management success is now you can efficiently, much more than before, manage project information. SharePoint provides various tools to effectively centralize and manage project information, things like your schedule, documents, your change requests, risk log, budget. I mean, I'm not saying we're not doing this today, but today, again, I'm sure a lot of you would agree, all these information today are just scattered all over the place. It's in like 10 Excel files, or it's in the network share. And what's even worse is if if the project team emails them back and forth, what's the latest version? Who has what? Right? How easy is it if your boss calls your project coordinator up and say, hey, can I see that project status report from 2 weeks ago? How would your coordinator handle that, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but we end up spending a lot of time and effort and resource just to get to that piece of information. Whereas with SharePoint, everything's centralized in one location, but not only centralized, it has all these built-in document management features. Check in, check out, where two individuals won't accidentally overwrite each other's files because SharePoint will tell the second person, hey, Dux is working on it. You can only look at it for now. It has version control. You can track version history. You can easily see who touched the document when, or the information when, with the appropriate permission. We can also do content approval as well. Just to show you another screenshot here. So this is SharePoint. What I did is, in some examples on the upper left section, I created what's called a project resource list, where I have all the resource information, their rates, some notes about the resource, and then the bottom I have calendar, and then looking at the center one where it says share documents, that's a document repository where I can put all the necessary project information, centralize it, and look at all the features I have. Check in, check out, version history. I have a demo of this as well. If you're interested to see it, there's a URL on the screen. And again, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint slide once we're done. Yeah. The next benefit is it improves project collaboration, right? From the aspect of collaborating on documents, there are tools such as document workspaces, where let's say we need to build a big document, a requirements document, a proposal, a test document. Relevant people can engage in a single repository or what's called a workspace and jointly develop that piece of document. And then we can also provide a lot of team collaboration tools, such as wikis, discussion boards, and meeting workspaces. Now let me clarify something. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of organizations engage in is they have SharePoint and they throw it to people and say, here's SharePoint and go and prosper, right? So it's just like throwing a tool and telling your users, go and look for a problem. No, that's not the way to go. For example, with respect to project management, how I would normally talk to project managers or organizations that want to roll out SharePoint, I would ask them, okay, in your project management world, what are the pain points you're feeling? Well, Dux, we have an issue with documenting lessons learned. It's just people just email stuff back and forth. It's not effective. Well, guess what? Wikis are the right way to go if you have SharePoint. Well, Dux, we have problems in clarifying requirements. Again, people just email back and forth. We can't track it. Discussion boards are great. So here's my point, friends. Project management, HR, finance, whatever business area you're in, the key is to draw a lot of the pain points that your users are experiencing and then map it to SharePoint capabilities. Because at the end of the day, SharePoint is just a tool. SharePoint will not run your projects much better. It all goes back to sound process. It all goes back to proper requirements gathering, and then you map it to this tool called SharePoint. Yeah, I just want to clarify that. Now, here's an example. This is actually used in my project environment. I've got a discussion board set up to clarify requirements. And the beauty of this is the customers would post any questions, and us as well, and then we'll engage in that dialogue in the discussion within that project site in SharePoint. What are the benefits? I mean, Dux, why can't they just email it? Well, first of all, everything's centralized. So I don't have to go to 10,000 places and figure out what people said 6 months ago. But second, it's searchable. SharePoint comes with a very powerful search engine that I can search against whatever information I want. And as you can see on the left side, right, everything about the project is in that one central repository. Another benefit with SharePoint, SharePoint seamlessly integrates with existing project management tools. For example, email. Did you know that in SharePoint you can set up an email account for a SharePoint document repository? So let's say you got an email from your vendor, like a quote or a proposal. You can forward that email to SharePoint. Yes, you don't have to use Internet Explorer or any browser, just email. You forward emails to SharePoint, and SharePoint will store it. Another seamless integration. Did you know that SharePoint integrates with Office without the need of a browser? What I'm talking about here is let's say you have a SharePoint calendar, right? You can integrate it, bring it into Outlook. So you can add dates in Outlook, and it will show up on your SharePoint project site, and vice versa. If people put information in the SharePoint project site, it will show up in Outlook. Well, hold on. How many of us in here synchronizes our Outlook with our BlackBerries? So are you saying, Ducks, if SharePoint synchronizes with Outlook and my Outlook synchronizes with BlackBerry, if people put stuff in that SharePoint website, it will show up on my BlackBerry? Absolutely. Yeah? And you got to have Outlook 03 and above to have it. Now, if you don't have Outlook, I know. Is it version dependent? 03 and above. Now, what if we don't have Outlook? Does that mean SharePoint is no good? No, it doesn't mean that. Everything I've talked to you about doesn't require these components. If you do have these components, it just has better features, better integration. It's much more convenient at the end of the day. Because like for me, I interact with SharePoint from Outlook. I don't have to open Internet Explorer or other browsers. Yeah? Now, let me just show you a quick example here of integration. So on the left side, you see Office 07. That's Word right there. You see all the SharePoint capabilities, check-in, check-out, version history. It's available. The next one, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but what I have there is I have information in Excel, right? Can you access SharePoint through other browsers? Absolutely, Maurice. People are surprised, but I use a Mac. I have a MacBook, and I interact with SharePoint through Safari, Firefox, Google Chrome. I wrote an article on how you interact SharePoint with Chrome, so you're good. But going back to my discussion here, if you look at the second screenshot, you can see Excel and SharePoint. What I have here is I have information in SharePoint being synchronized with Excel and vice versa. And that Excel file is just sitting on some user's machine. It doesn't have to be elsewhere. And then the last screenshot at the bottom is a screenshot from Outlook. I was creating a meeting invite, and notice there's a thing called Meeting Workspaces. That is a SharePoint capability. Now, I recorded a video for you where I synchronized Excel and SharePoint. The URL is down there. I talked through it, and you'll see how you can synchronize Excel and SharePoint as well. Now, another big benefit of SharePoint, let's move on here to the next line. There you go. Is you can automate project processes. Now, what I mean by project processes, things like change control. You have users fill up a change request. Once the user fills it in, it goes to you. It goes to the change control board. You guys approve it. Once it's approved, so that whole process can be automated. Because today, we have all these processes, and really, if we want to automate it, we have to have IT write a program to do it, or we have to buy a third-party product that does it. But with SharePoint, along with what I've been talking about so far, you as a project manager can develop this logic, this workflow as how you want it. Right? There's a lot of built-in workflows like the 3-state workflow, signature collection workflow, but you can build your own workflows as well if you wanted to. It doesn't require programming. Here's an example of what's called a change request workflow I built in SharePoint, and again, no programming, where a user comes in and he or she can fill in a change request form. And what happens is once the change request form gets submitted, it goes and contacts the project manager. The project manager will confirm that he or she receives it, then it moves on to the next state to the change control board. The beauty with all this is, since it's automated, if the project manager doesn't do anything, you can tell SharePoint after 2 days, if the PM doesn't respond, ping the PM again. After a week, if the PM doesn't respond, contact the PM's boss and tell the boss, hey, this PM's being a slacker or something. But kidding aside, you can automate all this, right? Because today, I mean, we have all these processes, but the problem is we're so busy, it's just so hard to keep up with all this stuff, right? Now, with SharePoint automating all this, not only is it automated, everything is tracked. It accounts for what happened when the change request went in, when it was actioned, who did it, who approved it, what time. I was explaining this to my customer, and my customer goes, this is not good, Dux. I go, why not? Well, that means I have to be responsible and accountable now. Yeah, what a concept, right? But, I mean, in a serious note, we're in a day and age of accountability, traceability, compliance. Does SOX sound familiar? ITIL sound familiar? HIPAA, Section 508, right? So a lot of these compliance require some kind of process. And this, my friend, can truly, truly help you. Yeah. Another benefit is you can generate relevant reports. There's a lot of different ways to create reports in SharePoint. You can create what's called views. You can create interactive summaries or dashboards. Out of the box, if you have MOSS, MOSS comes with a lot of ready-made key performance indicators. Now, let me give you an example. Let's see here. So here's an example. And again, no programming required. On the right side, I have what's called a project milestones list, where I have all the milestones. I have the baseline, when I plan the task or the milestone to be achieved. And then I have all the actual finish, when we actually achieved it. And what I did is I tied it to what's called a chart web part. And again, no programming. What this does is it takes the data, the variance between the two, and displays it in the chart format. You can display it in a bar chart format, graph format, etc., however you want it to be. Now, the key here is anytime these milestones get updated, the chart gets updated as well, real time. So now you don't have to deal with your customers calling you on a Friday afternoon saying, Docs, I want this report, or Docs, I want that report. Because you can build something like this and just have them go to it at their convenience, and they'll just see these updates anytime they want. Very, very powerful. And by the way, this is a technology called web parts that allowed me to do this. And again, no programming. I'm empowered to do it. Lastly, number 7 benefit of using or leveraging SharePoint for project management is enabling mobile access. Again, we use a lot of mobile devices today. What SharePoint has, it has a mobile version of every SharePoint site. Web pages are optimized and formatted for a mobile browser, so we don't have to deal with scrolling to the right. And in addition, it loads much faster than a regular website because it's all text. Not only can we look at it, we can also interact with the information. We can add calendar entries, we can add task entries, and everything that we put on the phone through this mobile site will show up on the regular site. In addition, email can be used to interact with the SharePoint PMIS. I said that already. So if you have a BlackBerries or iPhones, these are great with email. Well, if you set up your SharePoint site to receive email, you can forward an email to your SharePoint site as well. I think that's brilliant. I use it all the time. Yeah. So with that, those are the 7 ways that you can leverage SharePoint for project management success. And if you're wondering, well, Dux, everything you talked about, do I have to have Microsoft Office SharePoint Server to do all that? No. What I just talked about only requires the bare bones basic Windows SharePoint services. Now, if you want sophisticated charts or dashboard, WSS doesn't have any. MOSS comes with the KPI web parts, as what I've described. And you can certainly go to third-party vendors like Bamboo Solutions or EPM Live. They have a lot of these extra tools that you can add as well. Your dashboards, your charts. A company up in Canada called Dundas has really nice dashboards as well. Okay? All right. Now, with that, I'd like to open the floor now for any questions. I know as I was discussing this, I saw a lot of questions going in and out. And Catherine, if you would be so kind, if you have any questions for me, go for it.
Sure, Docs. I've been pulling some out. And a person just asked one that first of all, I had no idea that SharePoint was that amazing. And is it really true that you use this on a Mac? And
yes.
Users can...
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I've been using a MacBook Pro. In fact, you know what? I'm going to take a picture of myself right now, and I'll post it right away.
Great.
But the point is, I've been using a MacBook Pro in the last 2 years. Yes, my company is a Microsoft partner, but yeah, it's great. It works. So, and even better, just to let you know, Microsoft is coming out with a, I forgot what it's called, for Microsoft Office for the Mac. It's like a tool, a connector now that you can interact with SharePoint. So yeah, to answer that question, SharePoint can work in a Mac.
That's great. And one person just asked, you said everything you showed was on the bare bones SharePoint, which I thought was excellent news. And one person asked, does the milestone chart that you displayed come with SharePoint or with MOS?
Very good question.
Okay.
When I showed the dashboards, in fact, let me quickly go back to it. Yeah. Everything is part of Windows SharePoint Services, which is the bare bones, the free version, except the chart that you see on the left side. The chart I use there is I got from a company called Bamboo Solutions, and that's all I purchased is the chart. And it's called a chart plus web part, and it's really inexpensive. It's a couple $100, maybe $100, $200, something like that. So everything here except for the actual chart is off of Windows SharePoint Services.
Okay. And then one gentleman is asking, I'm just going to run through these in no particular order, but one gentleman asked, is there a way to combine the status report into one for upper management?
Absolutely. That's a common request or question I get. Let's say, okay, at a portfolio level, let's say you're at the project management office. There's 10 projects running. Each of those projects have their independent project site. They have their own status. Is there a way that you can roll everything up? And from executive management level, they don't have to go to every single site. They'll just have their own little dashboard, and it'll tell you the health of all these projects at a high level. The answer is yes. You can roll all of them up. Quickly, I want to address somebody was asking in the chat room too. If you have MOS, can you do the dashboard stuff? Absolutely. MOS comes with KPI web parts. So you don't have to buy third-party products. MOS has that already. Okay?
Great.
Is the change control portion only available for 2007 or for 2003? Very good question, Cheryl. The change control relies heavily on this technology called workflow in SharePoint. And workflow does not exist in the prior version of SharePoint. It's only available in Windows SharePoint Services 3 and Microsoft Office SharePoint Services 2007. So for your question about 2003, unfortunately, no. You cannot build that automated change control system in the prior version.
Oh, great. Here is a question about global projects. Is it simple enough to share with people across the globe? I guess powerful enough is the main question.
Absolutely. Well, the question comes back. If your question is can my team from different parts of the world access it? Absolutely, because this is a web-based technology. And in theory, if your organization, the IT group, set it up that it can be accessible via the web, then yeah, I don't see any issue. However, I know of organizations setting up SharePoint and limiting it only internally, that nobody else from the outside can get in, then obviously they can't get in.
Okay.
But the technology itself is enabled to be accessed via the internet.
Okay, and here's a good question. Can we link multiple SharePoint calendars to one master calendar with MOS?
The answer is no, but there's a solution to that. Even if you have WSS or MOS, you cannot roll up all these calendars because it's just not built in. I've done that with a customer. We use a third-party product, again, from Bamboo Solutions. They have what's called a list roll-up. And then with that list roll-up, you can roll up all these calendars and make it display in a single one.
Okay, someone was asking if I'd repeat the question, and that was, hold on, I deleted it. Can we link multiple SharePoint calendars to one master calendar with MOS?
Yeah, that was the question. And I want to address, too, Ray. Ray brought up a great point. End-user SharePoint has material on master calendars. They do. But what they have, and Mark Miller, I know the editor of End-User SharePoint, his approach is the other way. His approach is taking one calendar, putting all the necessary information, and pushing it out to all these independent sites. So that's one way to do it. But what if you want to take calendars from independent sites, let's say you got 10 calendars, and you want to bring it up to a single one, there's nothing in WSS nor in MOS that can do it. You have to get a third-party product.
Okay. And someone was asking, back to your question on rolling up the status reports, do you have a demo on how to do that on your site?
I actually am working on one. So if you keep up with my blog, I got so many stuff I want to write about, but I will. I have it already. I just need to record a video for it.
I know.
So it's coming soon. Just keep up with my blog, sign up newsletter, and I'll definitely go.
Okay. And let me see. Here's one about Active Directory. Are there any gotchas in using Active Directory groups to secure workflows, or is it pretty seamless?
No, it's pretty seamless. The only I don't even think it's a gotcha. The only thing with Active Directory is realize that what you're bringing into SharePoint is the security group. None of the permissions come through, meaning you bring in the group, and that's all that comes in. You have to redefine permissions in SharePoint. And that goes the same with actual Active Directory accounts.
Okay, good. Let me see. I'm trying not to miss any of these. Back to the demos. Didn't you say that you had a demo for Dashboard?
Did I say I had a demo?
I may have lost track. Forgive me.
No, I said I recorded 2 video demos, but I can certainly do one. Usually I do a live demo for Dashboard, but you know what? I'll record one and I'll put it up on my blog too.
Okay.
I have 2 demos out that I recorded. One is a 10-minute video demo, and I'm speaking over it, where you can see how a PM can build a PMIS. And the second is I had a demo on synchronizing Excel and SharePoint.
Okay, good. Well, we could always do another demo here someday. I think
Absolutely.
That would be great. I would love to.
So we could do a session on building dashboards in SharePoint.
That would be
if everybody is up for it, you guys want that? If you want that, we'll do one. Just say yes.
They're saying yes.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll just schedule another time.
Okay. Good. And here's another question. This is from William asking, as a project manager, do I really need to be a SharePoint expert to manage SharePoint implementations? That's
a great question. Okay. Do I really need to be a SharePoint expert? Now, it's kind of segueing, getting off our topic here, but really quick. If you're tasked to roll out SharePoint, manage a SharePoint project, if you really need to be an expert, if you're asking about, well, Dux, do I have to know programming? Do I need to know how to hook up to Active Directory Exchange? No. However, you got to know what SharePoint is about and its potential. Because the problem today is organizations roll out SharePoint and they have no clue. To say it bluntly, they would just say, SharePoint, install it and let it loose, right? Just to give you an example, I was at a client site a few months ago. They said, Dux, we spent $800,000 to 3,000 users. Nobody wants to use it. What happened? So I went in. So they hired me to go in and figure out what went wrong. So they thought it was something wrong technically. But I go, okay, show me your business case. Show me your requirements document. Show me your cost-benefit analysis. And they said, we don't have that, Dux. I go, how do you roll out SharePoint? Well, the boss said we'll roll it out. And by hell or high water, we rolled it out, technically. But users weren't engaged. So I talked to the users, and it turns out that they didn't care for it because it was like a Lamborghini Diablo, nice car, dropped on somebody who just learned how to ride a bike. Right? It wasn't relevant. So that's key. So my suggestion is, A, when you roll out SharePoint, ask why. What's the purpose? Right? And second, set up metrics of what SharePoint will do for you. For example, in 3 months, we will improve our efficiency. Users won't spend 45 minutes a day looking for stuff. Because of SharePoint, after 3 months, they'll only spend 20 minutes. So you got to set up all these metrics and measure the success of SharePoint. And without doing that, you won't be able to be successful. So do you have to know SharePoint? Yes, but not at a very deep technical level.
Yeah, I hear you. There were a lot of comments when you were talking, when you were giving your presentation about training and how necessary it was. And I think I copied one down where,
And by the way, just to give you, just to give you some thoughts to think about, in my blog, go to meetdux.com. And in one of my entries there, I have a posting on, will the real SharePoint consultant please stand up? But essentially what that is, it's a checklist of things that you should be asking your consultant or IT when they roll out SharePoint. Like, what are the things they should be doing, right? If they come in and say, oh, let's pop the CD in, roll it out. Yeehaw. That's not it. There's a bunch of stuff you should be asking and looking for from them, like setting up metrics, engaging your users, properly gathering requirements, creating a business case, cost benefit. I could go on and on, but it applies for any tools.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Well, I think we're about out of time now, and I'm sorry, just reading the comments there. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And Dux, I want to thank you. What a great presentation.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So looking forward to having you back. And thank you everyone else for joining us. And like I said, Dux's site is a great resource, and we also we'll record this, and I'll send everyone a link as soon as that recording's available. And we'll also post the slides on SlideShare after the event. So thank you everyone so much for joining us, and good talk.
Well, thanks again, everybody, and you all have a great weekend. Don't be a stranger, so I got my contact info there. Look me up, and I'll definitely want to talk to you. Take care.
Take care. Hold on, let me just...